In this video, I want to talk all about how we keep our van cool, or kept it cool because I sold it. Watch my other video. We ended up going with a Zero Breeze Mark II in our van. These are great little air conditioning units that don't use very much power, but still put out a lot of cold air. And just as a disclaimer, this is not something that's going to keep your van a cool 68 degrees while it's like 95 degrees outside, but it will keep your van bearable, and when you have it blowing directly on you, it's going to keep you extremely comfortable. Just like in a car, the reason they put all those vents right there blowing on you is because that's what's keeping you cool. It's not necessarily cold in the car, but you feel comfortable because the air is blowing on you. So it's the same way with this. That's why I installed it over the bed, so if we're laying in the bed, we can just point that hose down on us, and it kept us nice and comfortable. But in this video, I want to go over exactly how I installed it because it's a pretty big, bulky unit. So it was a little difficult to find a good way to install it in a small van, but I'm going to show you what I came up with. So for us, this whole project was kind of an afterthought. Originally, I wasn't going to put an air conditioner in the van until I realized just how hot it got in there, and I decided we needed one. So I had already built out the van and then had to figure out how to get this in there. So this was kind of just the best thing I could come up with. But first thing I did was just built a shelf to put it on. And I decided to put it in the back corner of the van over the bed because we didn't really need the headspace over the foot of the bed anyway. And because this was an afterthought, I hadn't necessarily put enough framing inside of the wall to support a shelf that would hold this air conditioner. So that's when I came up with these arms that come down out of the ceiling, because I did have studs in the ceiling. So I just got these 2x2 arms, cut them at the right angles, and then just screwed them up into those studs I had in the ceiling, being careful not to go through the roof of the van, and then just screwed those to this shelf to add support out front. And then I did have at least one stud in the wall that I could use to attach the back of the shelf to. We built this shelf that's going to mount it here. It's not the most ideal, but it's all we could make work. These are the intake and exhaust hoses. They're going to come up through here. Let me see. They're going to come up through here. This will be scooted a little further back, and they're gonna go through the wall right here. About to cut those holes, which I hate cutting holes, but got to. So once I had somewhere to put the Zero Breeze, the next thing I needed was vents, because it needs to be able to bring fresh air in and also exhaust hot air. You can't just stick this in your van and expect it to work. It's gonna have to exhaust and bring in air to work properly. So we got these vents that are gonna mount on the back here. It's supposed to be waterproof, kind of worried about that. They're supposed to not let any water pass through, but with an angle, I'm not sure how that's gonna work. And because of the way the top of our van was shaped, I wasn't able to put these directly behind the Zero Breeze because it was at a little bit too much of an angle. The water would have run down into them. So I had to put them a little bit more towards the middle of the van and then just curve those hoses around to get to them. And to actually install the vents on the van, all you need is a 4-inch hole saw attachment for a drill. Once I had the holes cut, I just put a thick bead of silicone all the way around the inside lip of the vents and mashed them in place. But even where I did install the vents, like the back of the van is still at a little bit of an angle like this. The vents have the panels on them that are angled to try to keep water out, but because they weren't installed flat against the wall, they were installed like this, I was still worried about water coming down into those. So I needed to come up with some kind of hood to go over those vents. And because I'm cheap and crafty, I bought some plastic bowls at Walmart for like $1 and just cut those and silicone them over the vents, and it worked out perfectly. And I was still a little bit worried about water pooling up in the bottom of these vents and then running down into the hoses because they were at an angle. So I just kind of made like a wall of silicone up inside the vents at the bottom to stop that water from running in and make it run out, if that makes sense. So then I just needed to attach the hoses on the inside of the van. Getting the hoses on was a little tricky because there's nothing to really attach them to. So for this, I just used hot glue to kind of tack them in place because hot glue dries really fast. And then once they were up there, I just went around them with a ton of silicone to make sure that they were sealed tight and that they weren't going to come off. And then we've also got this hose. This is where the water drains out of the Zero Breeze, and then that hose just drops through there, and then that goes down through the wall, and there is a hole in the floor which was there from the old air conditioner that I took out, and that hose just drops down underneath the bottom of the van. I don't like the way it's kind of lifting up like that, because I'm afraid the water is not going to drain out, it's just going to drain back into the unit. So I just cut a piece of this trim I use for a lot of stuff. I'm going to set this in here, just on top of there, and basically when I screw this down, it should hold that down, because this is all going to be covered up anyway, so I don't really care how it looks. So that's just going to hold that down to make sure that it's able to drain properly. And another thing I'm going to do, I've just got this piece of scrap birch plywood. This I'm going to put up under the front of the Zero Breeze, to make sure, if we're not on perfectly level ground, that it's tilted back a little bit, and we'll be able to drain properly. Because we did have one instance, at one point we had the van parked somewhere, and we're going to be gone for a couple hours, and we left the air conditioner running for our cat Blueberry, and when we got back it had dripped all over the bed, because the van, we were parked on a bit of an incline, the van was kind of tilted down this way, and because of that, instead of the water running out the hose in the back, it was just pooling up in the Zero Breeze and running out somewhere. I wish that wouldn't happen, but it does. So to hopefully help with that, we're gonna tilt it back a little bit to make sure that it's able to drain. And then my last dilemma was the battery for the Zero Breeze. You don't have to get a battery with it, it just plugs in, but the battery is optional, and I thought it would be a good option to have. Say if our main power bank is running low, we could have that charged up and have a way to run the AC a little bit longer if we really needed it. The battery is made to latch onto the bottom of the Zero Breeze unit, and then there's a short cord that comes around and connects to it. But to have the battery attached to the Zero Breeze, that whole shelf would have needed to be a little bit lower, and I didn't really want it that low, so I decided it would be better, not necessarily better, I don't know why I decided to do it, but I attached the battery underneath the shelf. Maybe I'd already built the shelf, I don't even remember. But I attached the battery underneath the shelf with like a little metal bracket. And then later I ended up like building a whole little cabinet that the battery went in, and also gave us a cool little area to have like charging cables and stuff like that. Then the hose up front is where the cold air actually blows out. I just left the full length of this hose on there so that we could kind of stretch it wherever we were in the van to blow that cold air on us. And then also this part of the shelf or cabinet does have to stay open because there's another like air intake vent on the front of the unit, so you don't want to go blocking that or anything. And these do come with a remote, so that would be the best way for turning this on and off. I just kind of reach up in there and turn it on though, because I bought my unit as an open box on eBay. I got a discount on it, but it didn't have the remote with it, unfortunately. And another thing to note if you're thinking about doing something like this is your van is definitely going to need to be insulated. And if you have any windows, you're going to want those covered up with Reflectix or something while you're running this. I've seen reviews on these where people just stick them in a hot car with the sun blaring through all the windows and put a little thermometer in there, and they don't really make much of a difference, but you'd need a pretty serious air conditioner to make a difference like that. But if your van is insulated and you cover up the windows to keep that sun from coming in, it definitely does make a huge difference. Your windows are your biggest enemy when it comes to trying to stay cool in the van, because that sun is shining straight through and heating up everything that it's hitting basically, and that's what's going to make that the most radiating heat in your van. If you can stop any sunlight from coming into your van and then have some good roof vents to expel that hot air, then this thing will definitely cool your van down. But just try to keep your expectations realistic with this. It only uses 240 watts of power, so it's not going to be crazy cold, but if used properly, you can definitely make a difference and keep yourself comfortable. And if you're interested in how I actually power this, you can watch my other video about my Bluetti, where I explain how I power everything in my van. But thank you for watching this. I hope you found it helpful, and peace.